So, I was in the middle of playing Reveal Fantasia, looking at this little retro game Jack's Let's Journey with Cute Girls guide. A guide on a site advertising itself as centering wholly around games starring women. And I got curious. This blog had some other games listed I hadn't seen detailed information on elsewhere. And then my eyes drifted from the guides down to the reviews. The person who ran this place sure was an odd character. Surprisingly accommodating for female audiences, and with wide tastes, they really would just play anything that's got cute girls in a leading role. Whether it be Sengoku Turb, Nugusel, Okuki, or even Desperia. That last review is a pretty funny one. One game caught my eye though. Alice in Cyberland, an early multimedia project. Possibly the first one blending anime and video game in quite the way that it does. The OVA is pretty unpopular, and the PS1 game, written by Chiaki J. Konaka of Serial Experiments Lane fame, is something I've heard little about beyond that it is okay. The review here is funny, mostly complaining about how the game has technical issues running on their PS2, so they kept having to switch back to the PS1, which they got worse image quality with. But there is one very particular thing they note. There is Yuri in this game? Wait, what? A hidden lesbian chapter? There's an entire bonus chapter about Alice going on a date with a girl? Wait a sec. This game released in 1996. The Revolutionary Girl Utena game on Saturn released 2 years later in 1998. Even if we factor in The Last Express, that released in 1997, and its PlayStation release was cancelled. There's also Saga Frontier, but that was also a year later in 1997. Is this the first major console game with explicit lesbian romance? There's only 3 other games I could think of you could argue that for prior to this. There's Eternal Felina on Super Nintendo, which tones down the relationship compared to the original light novels and OVA from what I understand, which were much more explicit. And then there's Guardian Recall, which I'm gonna have to fill that hole in later. And there's major homoeroticism in Galaxy Fräulein Yuna back in 1992. So, make no mistake, this is not to claim Alice is the first game to do it ever. The history stretches back further and further. The nature of gaming's history as an artistic medium has always left it especially open to expressions of LGBTQ identity, even if just through implication or in more niche computer game spaces. If a game like Virtual Lab can have its context flipped from perverted creepo horndog game to an odd mix of puzzle kusoge with remnants of someone's personal exploration of their feelings on their own bodily image, then it's not hard to say that many and more games have some more complex angle to their creation to view them from. And given how much has passed up in basic recognition through the last 2 decades, I've no doubt an even greater quantity of games remain in the 2 decades prior to look through. But Alice certainly seems like a good place to start. After all, there's one thing here that's certainly catching my eye. I mean, if this screenshot is real, then I don't think there's any ifs or maybes about it. This is, as far as I have witnessed in my history playing retro and Yuri video games, the first on-screen, zero pretension, lesbian kiss in a console video game. And that is how I ended up diving into the Cyberland myself. Let's see if we can't solve its mysteries. Now, before we can dive into the game, we kinda have to talk about the OVA here, because truly establishing the approach something like Dot Hack would take some years later, the OVA is the true beginning of the story. This is fully subbed, courtesy of Orphan, so I won't go too in-depth about it. As mentioned, this OVA has a pretty negative reputation, and I'm gonna diverge from that view a bit and say it's pretty good, just with problems. In Alice in Cyberland setting, the whole world has advanced to a point where it is connected together with an advanced World Wide Web known as Cyberland, which people are able to interface with in... Okay, it's The Wired from Serial Experiments Lane. All of this is The Wired. Konaka reused literally everything about this for Lane, so if you've watched Lane, you know what's going on here as much as you possibly could. The main difference is that here it's used as the grounds for high-concept magical girl adventures, instead of pure existential dread. Episode 1 is a pretty simple origin for our 3 science magical girls, largely focused on the leader of the trio, Alice. She's a computer teen extraordinaire whose father passed away when she was young, and when a nasty virus, created by online terrorists called cybernarchists, starts circulating in town that begins wiping out people's memory banks, literally erasing their memories, she attempts to trace the virus back and delete it. When the cybernarchist spreading the virus finds out, he backtraces her and takes over her computer, subjecting her to a hypnosis-induced? I don't know how, but he pulls her inside some kind of Cyberland nightmare, before a mysterious woman named Lucia rescues her and grants her a mysterious power that can allow her and her two friends, her head-achingly straight ditzy friend Julie and rich friend Rena, to directly interface with the VR internet connecting their society together, and the three of them use some cold sleep pods Rena's mother bought to assemble their own makeshift dive chamber. The three go into Cyberland together and blast the cybernarchist to Kingdom Come, saving the day, and beginning a long career as three mysterious heroes of Cyberland, who nobody knows the true identities of. Episode 1 is, to put it simply, the good part of the OVA. It's gorgeously directed, has a lot of foreshadowing for future story events, including the discussion of the possibility of Japan's internet getting cut off from the rest of the world, and even smaller bits, like Alice's reaction to Julie teasing her in the locker room, arguably hinting at subtler later bits of character work, and generally feels like a fragment of some long-lost sci-fi anime classic, if only in terms of vibes. It's hard to see why anyone would hate this OVA from this first episode. That is until you watch episode 2. Something happened here. That is to say, nothing happens here. The art and animation is a comical step down from how stunning the first episode was. The plot is supposedly Julie's focus episode, but it's a significantly worse main plot than the first episode, and nothing about this episode ever comes up again. Period. If you skip episode 2 of the OVA, you will lose literally nothing in terms of the wider storyline. It is truly baffling. Not to say that it's all bad, though. I still think some of the negativity is a bit overstated. Alice's scenes in this episode are pretty good. You get to see her chill out with the guy who hated his job so much he turned himself into a sea turtle, and tell Bill Gates her father is dead. The dialogue writing is still decently snappy and funny, it's just that the core plotline feels like a questionable waste of time that does more bad for the main girl involved than good. It does get us to the requisite what if there was a robot that could give birth plotline, though, which is... Konaka really liked asking that question. Like, he really liked that plot point. Is the OVA a misunderstood classic? I do think most of the hate is born out of people not being able to play the game. In the wider story context, I think this short little opening OVA is fine. I will note, though, that it very much establishes this property's overt relationship with sexualization. Cannot lie, if anything about that puts you off here, which I would understand, considering the age of the characters, the game is not any less dicey with it. I imagine it will be the biggest deal breaker for some people. The first thing that makes an impression about Alice in Cyberland, the video game for PlayStation, is definitely its 2D animation and sprite work. On the system famous for 3D, they made a pretty curious choice to focus almost solely on 2D presentation, in a way that ends up making the game feel more like a powered-up PC Engine CD game than a typical PlayStation release, and it solidifies Alice's general vibe of being a short-form sci-fi magical girl anime released as an odd and stylish PS1 adventure game. Thankfully, the visual quality of it all is much more in line with the first episode of the OVA, and never sinks as low as the second. As a game, it definitely leans more adventure game, or visual novel, depending on how you like to phrase it. Despite the presence of the turn-based combat, the only significant part utilizing 3D graphics, the 3D here is, well, it's 1996. It looks fine for then. The combat is bad. Oh man, the combat is bad. There's really nothing to say about it. It's pure rock, paper, scissors. That's the end of it. You pick an option, hope the enemy picks the option your option beats, and you either win or you don't. You can swap girls mid-combat if you run low on HP, but that's the absolute depth of the strategy offered. The 2D focus seems to be thanks to the particular developer behind this game, Glams, an extremely short-lived studio that seemed to have enough anime industry connections to spend its brief history shooting for very early attempts at multimedia video game anime projects. They did also have a hand in Quo Vadis, which is the only thing they made that doesn't seem to have some kind of overt sexual bent. After the action-packed opening introducing our 3 cyber magical girls, we shift to a slice of life down at their junior high. Alright, this is the weirdest thing. The OVA in the game didn't have, distance between them, and a lot of the game will assume you've watched the OVA. But then a lot of this opening is introducing new friend characters at school who didn't exist there. And they're fun characters, but they also don't, do anything. They never come up in the main plot. They're never relevant to anything that happens. Even the core trio's got some weird new lore dropped on us that they become the talk of the school for putting on a show at the school festival in bunny costumes. Were there supposed to be more episodes of the OVA they just didn't make? This is so bizarre to just drop in there.
かわいいよね、あの2年の子たち。そうよね、特にあのアリスって子。
The biggest important new detail dropped here that the OVA didn't even hint at is Alice's specific popularity among girls. This game really, really emphasizes the lesbian text of the setting right off the bat. Not only is there an entirely new character, a student council girl who is, I'm pretty sure, explicitly bisexual. She has a whole band of lesbian groupies and also has a whole subplot about her pining after a sports boy. But the sports boy never actually appears as a character after the opening, and instead all these scenes around her are focused on her having weird gay tension with Rena. But on top of that, there are multiple girls shown being deeply attracted to Alice, and there's a literal scene where Alice is hanging out with one of her friends, talking about the bisexual student council prez, where she straight up cannot believe that girl would be into a guy. She is in disbelief over this information. It's jokey, but you're barely half an hour into Alice in Cyberland before they're already discussing homosexuality in very frank terms. That's kinda nuts. Once you're past all the very opening stuff, the game sets you loose to wander town a bit. All you really do here is hit up event flags to see little character interactions and gags. It was around here that I really started getting into the game's vibes, honestly. Some of the jokes are actually kinda funny, and the music here is great. Really retro jazz fusion type stuff like you'd hear out of a Cassiopeia album. There are also these little optional mini-game event thing areas, but mainly the interesting one is the karaoke place. They just play full versions of the vocal character tracks they were trying to sell with this game, and the animations for them are pretty fantastic. From here, AIC follows a pretty simple pattern of wandering, seeing events that start setting up the larger conflict of the chapter, Alice receiving tips from a mysterious tipster named Sarah, and then finally getting us over into our little VR pod chamber to dive in and bust some cybercrime, or in the case of the first chapter, just find a little lost cyber pet. Which, maybe this is like if Chiaki J. Konaka wrote Totally Spies. The cyber worlds are also, unfortunately, the worst part of the game. They've got their own fun music and art, but it's where all the fighting happens, and the fighting really is this is bad. This is just very bad. It's not hard, it's just bad, and entirely random. Think Fate Extra, but you really literally have no strategic options or ways of countering stuff. It stinks! As much as I understand the idea of starting off with a low-key little pet investigation chapter, I think all this combines to make for an opening that's a little too lackadaisical for anyone who wants, a story or immediate reasons to care about anyone. I won't say that things pick up from here exactly, but it finds more actual ideas? Chapter 2 of Alice is a bit of a whirlwind. Some of the sexual humor here is pushing it, without being all that funny, centering around a Cheshire cat virus that's digging into people's personal information and harassing them in public using sexually provocative AI-generated images and animations. If Chapter 1 was testing your patience, it's no surprise that 2 would snap it in half here. Which makes it very funny when you get to the punchline of the episode, and it's weirdly sweet. Alice figures out the source of the virus as this kinda lonely old guy who explains he didn't actually mean to set it out onto the wider net. He was just opening up some old files from his youth, and this old virus he coded snuck its way out. The whole sequence of them figuring out the password to his computer so he can get back in to delete it is something else.
本当はおじいさんはずっと70年代の世界で遊んでいたかった。どんなに街が変わっても、みんなの格好が変わっても、心はずっと若い時のままでいたかった。
そんなつもりはなかったんだよ。
それが悪いことだなんて思ってない。誰だって自分が大好きだった時ってあるんだと思う。大事にしていたい時ってあるよ。
夢か。もう帰っておいで。
あ、消えちゃう。私にとって大事な時っていつのことになるのかな。ひょっとしたら今この瞬間なのかもしれない。
The important part of this chapter, though, is actually right at the start. This girl, right here, Yuka, she's Alice's underclassman and part of her, fan club. If you agree to give her Alice's autograph right here, you actually unlock an entire bonus chapter in between Chapter 2 and the next. And this is exactly what we came here for. Oh yes, it's time to talk about the lesbian date. I love this scene, I'll say it up front. This scene was worth playing this game for. This scene alone is one of my favorite things I've ever seen in a PS1 adventure game, and makes me very glad that I learned this language to play stuff like this. Forget all the more brazen lesbian jokes and the weird bits of fan service from earlier. The entire tone of the game changes for this one scene, and I'm kinda relieved it does. Alice finds a love letter in her shoe locker and recognizes it as being written by Yuka, the girl from the other day. Rena and Julie initially tease her a bit over it, but she decides going to see Yuka behind school would just be the polite thing to do, even if she's going to turn her down. Once Alice arrives, Yuka asks her a simple question. Does she think it's weird for girls to love other girls? For the entire chapter, you're given a series of choices like this. The right choice is usually the obvious one.
よくわかんないけど、人を好きになるのに男も女もないんじゃないかな。みなずきさん、私みたいな子好きですか？嫌いじゃないけど。よかった。私嫌いだって言われたらどうしようかと思って。もしもし、ゆかちゃん？みなずきさん。はい。私とお付き合いしてください。いいわよ。私もゆかちゃんのこと好きだし。本当ですか？もちろんよ。嬉しい。じゃあ今度の日曜日デートしましょう。はい。
And like that, Alice is set up for a first date. With a girl. The game really is not being subtle with any of this. And it rocks. What follows is genuinely like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like, look at this. This is awesome. This is totally sick. There's no punchline here. This isn't a setup for a joke. Alice and Yuka are just going on an honest-to-God theme park date and having a great time together. The art and animation here is beautiful and loaded with personality and charm. How is it this good? And the length of it all is crazy. This is a full 9 minutes of this stuff, and we're only just halfway through. There's this funny little aside where Alice and Yuka are just chilling out and eating lunch. And if you go along and have Alice eat the food Yuka made for her, they seriously just vibe. They just joke around and laugh and enjoy each other's company. It's so good.
そんなことないよ。私自分で作るとこんなに美味しくならないもん。そうなんですか？レトルトだったら得意なんだけど。みなつきさんはアリスでいいよ。アリスさんはよくお料理とかするんですか？うん。うちはお母さんが忙しいから。でもこれ本当に美味しいわ。ありがとうございます。そう言っていただけると作ってきた甲斐があります。
Then you get to the Ferris wheel scene. It's just, man, it's perfect. It's so good.
アリスさん？何？そっちへ行ってもいいですか？いいよ。やったー！危ない。大丈夫？ごめんなさい。今日は私に付き合っていただいて本当にありがとうございました。私こそ楽しかったわ。アリスさん、お願いがあるんですけど。何？ちょっと目をつむってもらえますか？ほう？今日は楽しかったです。さよなら。ファーストキス。女の子に取られちゃった。
And here we have it. To my knowledge, the very first on-screen lesbian kiss in a console game. As just what it is. Not played for laughs, not treated weirdly in any way. They just do it, man. They just do it. Yeah, this is just good. No qualifiers, it's just a really good scene. Yuka is genuinely really funny. They completely avoid making any jokes about her or her behavior towards Alice being weird, and the whole scene leaves off with this general implication about Alice herself being kinda closeted and just figuring this stuff out in a way that altogether makes her a more interesting and more fun protagonist. I guess Konaka was always cooking in his own way, even before he wrote Lane and opened the doors for Yoshitoshi Abe to cook this kind of stuff up too. Highly recommend watching Haibane Renmei and Nia Under 7, by the way. Even the follow-up to this scene when you bump into Yuka in Chapter 3 is pretty fun. Sadly, it's all from here that the game gets, well, I'm not sure whether to say this is where you really feel there are chunks of story missing, or it's just that Konaka was trying to get a bit too high concept before he really had other key staff who could follow what the hell he was trying to do. If you want to wait for someone to translate the games, you can try and experience this stuff for yourself. Here's a timestamp to the end. Chapters 3 and 4 are roughly the same kinds of episodic adventures as 1 and 2, but now focusing on larger villains and wider unraveling plot threads. Plot threads that almost kind of connect together into something. In Chapter 3, Alice befriends a shy glasses girl at school who, it seems, is another member of her fan club. Shortly after, a rash of digital art thefts occur, and I guess this chapter is about NFTs. They initially struggle to capture the thief, held in a standoff when she brandishes an illegal cyber weapon that, if it hits you, actually kills you. They're barely able to make it out alive with the intervention of a mysterious blonde bounty hunter, the very Sarah who's been feeding Alice her info up to now. Ultimately determining that the thief only targets art pieces of beautiful women, the three hatch a scheme to fake Julie as a new high-class digital art piece in order to lure her in, managing to take her on themselves this time and trace her real-life location to their very own school. Predictably, the culprit turns out to be that girl from Alice's school, against her own will though. Through some strange virus, she was being mind-controlled and turned into a literal cat burglar, obsessed with stealing art pieces of beautiful women.
サイバーランドなんて遊び場なんだもん。嫌なこととかあってもそれは夢なんだよ。だから忘れられる。でしょ？ありがとう、アリス。アリスって呼んでくれたね。
Shortly after freeing her, Alice finally meets face-to-face with Sarah. They don't exchange the most pleasant of words.
サイバーランドで乱暴なことしないで。
あら、いつからあなたはサイバーランドの女王様になったの？そんな命令が出せるわけ？
命令なんて。
あなたたちがレベル8まで潜れることは評価したんだけど。でも、私の仕事は邪魔しないで。
偉そうに。
今サイバーランドには異変が起きている。あなたたちは気づいてるでしょ？あなたたち子供がどうにかなる相手じゃないのよ。これは私の仕事。いいわね。
何あの年増女は。でも本当だ。何が？今サイバーランドで起こってること。
Chapter 4 totally melts away the leisurely lead-in, showing building unease at the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, as cybersecurity officer Omata and his guy pore over news articles about the up-and-coming cybernarchist hacker Torukemada. Cutting back to the girls as Alice fumbles ineptly at PE. She notices one of the school cameras staring awkwardly in her direction. After classes, she opts to go check the school security room herself.
ハローシステム。
あなたの正門は登録されていません。
そんなはずないわ。
そんなはずないことはないです。
そんなはずないことはないことはないわ。
そんなはずないことはないことはないことはないです。
そんなはずないことはないことはないことはないことはないわ。
そんなはずないことはないことはないことはないことはないことはないです。
そんなはずないことはないことはないことはないことはないことはないことはないわ。
そんなはずないことはないことはことはことはことはことはことは。こんにちは。指示をどうぞ。
うちの学校のシステム、こういうバグがあんだよね。
Sure enough, someone was watching, piping in from an outside connection. When Alice tries to trace back that connection, the system bugs out and shuts down. As the girls head home, for what is coincidentally the second time in the story, they pass right by Omata himself, receiving an emergency call to return to base. Torukemada is making his move. He's hacked into the city's systems and set some kind of trap. Omata chooses not to underestimate him. This guy's no ordinary hacker. He's a super hacker. Running a search on Cyberland level 7, they find that this enigmatic super hacker set them up with a parasite bomb. It's a bit hard to parse what they're saying in this scene, thanks to the game's lack of subtitles, mildly crunchy audio quality, and loud music playing over the dialogue. But it seems like this bomb blows up more than just data. Not only is this attack targeting the MITI's databanks, it threatens to demolish the ministry itself. This is a problem far too big for Omata to solve on his own. He's gonna need the girls. The game then cuts to Alice taking a bath, which I'm going to assume is not a good idea to show on YouTube. Rena calls her on her cyberphone to show her a strange image recorded flashing on the news, prompting Alice to jump out of the tub and dash to her computer. Hidden within this image capture of Alice's Cyberland face is a scrambled barcode labeled with the MITI's address. It's time to head out. Not long after arriving, they meet the man himself. Though rather than giving his real name, Omata calls himself by Gideon in here. He comes clean about what he wants the girls to do. He can't get to level 7 to disarm the parasite bomb himself, so he's enlisting the girls to use their elite skills to bring him down there. Alice, the Good Samaritan as always, agrees. Not long after hitting level 7, Sarah comes in through her path down here to provide backup, she and Gideon seeming to have some kind of history with each other. After bashing the drone to bits, Gideon grabs the bomb, but what pops out of it's no explosion. It's our pink-haired super hacker friend, and the man who's been spying on Alice. He warps behind Julie, and following the game's sole unwinnable boss fight, takes her hostage, setting his conditions for Alice to either give him Lucia or never see her friend again. As he tries to get away though, Alice and Rena follow right after him, and things get a little wild.
さすがにレベル8はきつい。頑張って。いた。ジュリお願い。目を覚まして。嫌だ。
じっとしていなさい。じゃないと怖い目に遭う。
あなたがサイバーランドを荒らしてるの？あなたが変なことをずっと仕掛けてきたの？
私は召喚されたのだ。君のダイブシステムを褒美にな。
避けたこと言ってんじゃねえよ！みんなお情けがないんだから！
なんだ？
こういう美形に限ってリアルワールドでどう臭かったりするんだよね。
このガキ。
ナイスじゃん、ジュリ
頼む。君たちにいてもらわないと私のシステムではこのレベルにとどまれない。
一生ここで好きにしてればサイバーランドの王様なんでしょ。
アリス、助けるの？どんな悪い人でもどうして？
やめてくれ。私を呼んでおいてこれはないだろう。私は使い手のあるハッカーだ。やめろ。やめてくれ。
誰なの？やめてよ。サイバーランドって何なの？レベル8の下には何があるのよ。
アリス、エキジットのリミットだよ。もう緊急浮上しないと。
緊急エキジット。何が始まってるの？
At the start of the final chapter, the MITI cyber cop himself comes by to visit the girls after school, finally meeting face to face. He takes the girls over to the local cafe for some tea and cake, while he explains complicated plot stuff. There's some kind of freaky dark cloud, or zone, circulating at the deepest layers of Cyberland, initially thought to be some kind of advanced stealth virus, but this looks slightly freakier than a regular computer bug. Alice decides it's finally time to ask Lucia some questions. She was always told not to go deeper than level 8, because there is nothing beyond level 8. She is unable to elucidate new or clearer information from her. Later, leaving her apartment, Alice sees something. And this really prompts questions. Alice talks like this bunny girl is some important figure she shouldn't be seeing in the real world. But there's been no prior narrative context for why this is the case. She's not in the OVA. She wasn't brought up earlier in the game. Was she a plot point from a later OVA episode they just didn't make? Meanwhile, the zone in Japan's Cyberland is continuing to spread. The ministry in panic, trying to reassure all the other foreign ministries that it will remain contained down to level 8, that level 7 is impregnable. But that much doesn't do it for these foreign dignitaries. As long as there's some risk of this zone spreading into their cyberlands, they want nothing to do with it. Gotta admit, I'm a big fan of the insane national stereotype guys here.
ネットワークセキュリティに完全などない。とにかく日本とはネットワークを断絶する。
Ultimately, they make their terms clear. As long as this thing's here, they're cutting off Japan's network connections from the entire rest of the world, leaving them isolated, just like foreshadowed in the OVA. I guess Alice was peeking in on this because she gives Omata a call and tells him she's gonna clear this whole thing up for them. Before heading into the deepest layer, what Lucia refers to as the world that should not exist, she warns them that her protection will be ineffective down there. Alice still chooses to go, fearing what the future may look like with Japan's network wholly isolated from all other nations. Beginning their final dive, the girls plunge into the absolute depths of Cyberland, down through level 8 and into the zone below, which is full of robo-knights? Ultimately, Julie tries to sacrifice herself to clear out the horde of enemies and create a safe path for Rena and Alice. Left exhausted, Rena grabs her and flies up to exit out of their dive, leaving the rest to Alice. Lucia opens the way for her, and Alice offers her thanks for all the help she's given them in their short time together. When Alice gets to the bottom of the zone, things get interesting. The entity we call the Zone introduces itself as a being born within Cyberland, of mankind's endless greed. She and Alice trade words about the true meaning of Cyberland, whether it represents our hopes and dreams or our desire and lust, before the being attempts to manipulate her with an image of her dead father.
"私の記憶の中にいるパパはそんな喋り方しない。ずっと会っていないけどわかる。絶対パパはそんなこと言わない."
On rejecting this false image, things start to get a bit violent.
アリス、我の中へ。
私わかった。
何が分かったというのか。
あなたがぶつけてきた情報、私に苦痛を与えるだけの情報。でもあなたには欠けているものがある。
何だというのだ。
あなたはここに実存しているって言った。でもそんなことは不可能よ。情報は今みたいに対象に向かって流れるものでなくては力にならないもの。あなたが言ったことを証明するね。ここは望みが叶うところ。でもそれは決して悪い欲望を満たすだけじゃない。ここはみんなの世界なの。みんなで作った世界なの。それを支配なんてできるはずない。
The final battle is not any more complex than the previous ones. I saw someone guess that the fights in this game are purely scripted, fake, and can't actually be lost, and I wouldn't be surprised. But the game sure tried to make me feel like I was gonna have to restart some stuff here. After you clear the first phase, things only continue to get more bizarre. No, I have no idea what is supposed to be happening here.
やるわね。
お相手してあげるわ。かかってらっしゃい。
With the entity known as the Zone defeated, Lucia comes in to rescue Alice, and the questions only continue to compound.
私たちがいたとこってどうやら誰かの脳の中だったみたいね。これがレベル9。あ、ルシア、こんなところに来ちゃったら。これからもサイバーランドのことお願いね。ダメ、ルシアが消えちゃう。さようならアリスちゃん、またきっと会える。
We get a little cut over to a news announcement about the isolation of Japan's network being called off, and Alice floats up through the sky, seeing things No, I didn't skip anything. None of these characters appeared previously. Afterwards, the girls go back to their regular lives, and Lucia is back as a school teacher program. Okay. And the bunny girl from earlier is here? No, like actually, did we just skip stuff? Were there parts of the story that just weren't made? What does the internet being a giant brain mean? Oh hey, the end credits have new CGs of Alice and her girlfriend. Cute. I like Alice in Cyberland. Is it a cohesive story? Not really. Is it a really neat artifact of its time with neat aesthetics and fun writing? Hell yeah. Though, like, honestly, Yuka is doing a lot of carrying here. Having a game this well produced, this early in the industry's life, that takes lesbian relationships seriously is just kind of like, man, that's sick. As a whole story, Alice in Cyberland is bizarre, but basically all of Konaka's work around this period was like that. I can at least put this at the upper end for having fun enough ideas carrying it. If that sequel he wanted to make had gotten made, I'd have played it. Oh yeah, he did write a whole sequel script. When he found out it wasn't getting greenlit, he put the whole thing up on his blog. The good old Konaka blog, where he writes about all his very, 90s conspiracy brain thoughts, which, is a different vibe from modern conspiracy brain. Konaka is such an interesting guy. I won't go over this script myself because I need this video to be shorter for my own sanity. Also worth mentioning is the extremely weird Windows 98 PC game released the same day as this one, Magician of the Moonless Night, which is weird, and nothing like the PS1 game, and not written by Konaka, and I frankly do not want to play it right now because it looks sort of bad. Anyway, catch you next time, in whatever level of Cyberland that may be. Maybe I'll find some more obscure Yuri to talk about, maybe even something that's more primarily Yuri. Or maybe I'll just talk about Space-Time Detective Double D Dracula Detective. Whichever way we go next, I promise I will talk about more video game lesbians before the year is over. You can count on that.